The stars had once been humanity's greatest dream. For thousands of years, people looked up at the night sky with wonder, whispering to themselves that one day they would belong among those glittering lights. And for a time they did. Humanity had built ships that cut across the void like silver blades. They had joined the great Galactic Council, a union of countless species bound by peace, progress, and shared destiny. But dreams, like stars, can burn out. Captain Elias Thorn stood before the vast viewing window of the Aegis Dawn, humanity's flagship, as the blue shimmer of the Anduril Nebula pulsed beyond the glass. His reflection stared back at him, silvered hair, a tired face carved by too many wars, and eyes that once believed in the promise of unity. Now those same eyes were cold, filled with something darker, betrayal. Behind him, the command deck buzzed softly. Officers moved in quiet coordination, their faces pale beneath the faint glow of control panels. No one spoke loudly. They all felt it, the stillness before something terrible. "Transmission from the Council," said Lieutenant Mara Voss, her voice careful. "They're demanding our immediate withdrawal from Vega Prime. They claim the quarantine breach was our fault." Elias didn't turn. "Our fault," he repeated quietly. His reflection's lips twisted in disbelief. "We warned them that the containment field was unstable. We sent data, reports, pleas, and they ignored us." Mara hesitated, then said softly, "Sir, they've declared us non-compliant members. Effective immediately, the Terran Accord is dissolved." The words hit like an invisible blade. Around the deck, officers froze. No one breathed. Humanity, the species that had rebuilt planets, healed plagues, and defended the outer colonies, had been cast out by the very council it helped create. Elias finally turned, his boots echoing across the deck. "So they've chosen exile for us," he said, his voice low, hard as steel. "After all we've done, after all the blood we've shed for their borders?" "Orders, Captain?" Mara asked, her tone trembling slightly. Elias stared out at the nebula once more. "Transmit to Earth Command," he said at last. "Tell them the Council has severed the Accord. Tell them!" He paused, his jaw tightening. "Tell them we've been betrayed by the stars." The news swept across human space like a storm. On the colonies of Mars, Luna, and Titan, people gathered around holoscreens, their faces a mix of disbelief and anger. In the orbital academies, cadets who once trained to serve alongside alien allies now ripped the insignia of the Council from their uniforms. At the Terran Assembly in Geneva, President Elena Cortez stood before a sea of delegates. Her voice, calm yet burning with restrained fury, echoed through every human settlement. "We extended our hand to the stars," she said, "and they struck it away. We offered trust and they gave us betrayal. Humanity has been abandoned, but we are not broken. We will rise. We will endure. And if the stars turn against us," she paused, her eyes glinting like fire, "then we will remind them what humanity is capable of." Her words became a rallying cry. Across the colony's production lines roared to life. The old defense fleets were reactivated, their black hulls gleaming beneath artificial suns. Engineers and scientists, once collaborators in peaceful projects, now poured their brilliance into war machines the galaxy had never seen. Yet, beneath the swelling pride, there was sorrow. Many humans had friends among the alien races, companions, colleagues, even loved ones. To think of them now was to feel a deep, silent ache. Humanity's heart had been torn in two, half longing for the peace that once was, half burning for the justice that must come. Back aboard the Aegis Dawn, Elias watched the stars drift by like indifferent gods. He remembered when those lights had filled him with wonder. Now each one seemed a reminder of betrayal. "Sir," Mara said quietly, stepping beside him, "what if we're wrong? What if there's still someone out there who will stand with us?" Elias turned his gaze toward her, and for a moment the weight in his eyes softened. "If they are," he said gently, "they'll find us standing, not begging." He looked once more into the sea of stars, and his voice fell to a whisper only the universe could hear. "Let them remember this day, the day humanity stopped dreaming and started awakening, and so began the silence before the storm." The first strikes came without warning. 3 Terran trade convoys vanished near the Council border worlds. No distress signals, no survivors. The official message from the Galactic Council called them pirate incidents. But the debris told another story. The scorch marks, the precision cuts through titanium hulls, the strange weapon signatures. It was no raid. It was a message. On the bridge of the Aegis Dawn, Captain Elias Thorn studied the recovered footage in silence. The hollow display flickered with ghostly light. Ships torn apart by energy beams too advanced for any pirate faction, bodies drifting in the cold dark. The silence that followed was unbearable. Lieutenant Mara Voss swallowed hard. "Sir, those weapons, they're council issue." Elias didn't answer. His eyes never left the floating wreckage. In the reflection, the faint stars looked like tiny watching eyes. "They don't even try to hide it," he muttered. "They want us afraid, broken, alone." He turned, his voice rising, steady but fierce. "Patch me through to Earth Command." The hollow channel shimmered to life, revealing President Elena Cortez and Admiral Harlan Drey on the command dais back on Earth. Both looked drawn, as if the weeks had carved years into their faces. "Captain Thorn," the Admiral said, "we've reviewed the evidence. There's no denying it. The Council has sanctioned covert strikes against human assets. They're framing us to justify what comes next." "What comes next?" Elias asked. "Containment," the President said, her tone clipped. "They will surround our systems, cut our supply routes, starve our colonies into submission. They want us to kneel before we can even fight back." Silence filled the channel. Then Elias said softly, "And if we don't kneel?" Alina met his gaze through the transmission, her expression unreadable. "Then history will remember us as either savages or survivors." The channel ended. The next months forged humanity into something the galaxy had never seen. The great shipyards of Mars, silent for decades, awoke again, their red skies filled with the thunder of new engines. The Aegis-class dreadnoughts rose from the dust, forged in haste but built with precision. Entire continents shifted their economies toward defense and survival, but this was no reckless march to war. Humanity had learned from the Council, studied them, worked beside them, and understood their weaknesses. Every human scientist who once built for peace now built for preservation. Every engineer, every pilot, every farmer on a colony moon knew that survival was no longer an idea. It was a duty. Children in schools learned star maps and evacuation codes. Artists painted not dreams of alien cities but visions of human unity. And through it all, Elias Thorn became the face of defiance. His speeches, gruff, simple, sincere, spread through the networks like wildfire. "They called us impulsive," he once said to a crowd gathered in the ruins of the Titan spaceport. "They called us emotional, and they were right. Because emotion, hope, love, fury is what makes us alive. Machines can calculate, empires can rule, but only humans can endure." Those words burned into the collective soul of humanity. But endurance came at a price. The colony of Vega Prime fell silent. When scouts finally reached it, they found the cities turned to glass, the forest charred to ash. Billions gone. The Council blamed a reactor meltdown. Humanity knew better. Elias stood at the memorial field, a vast expanse of shining names stretching to the horizon. The wind carried the faint hum of the nearby reactors, and somewhere, a child's voice recited a prayer for the lost. Mara approached, her uniform dark against the silver landscape. "Sir, Vega Prime scans show Council ion trails. They were there. They did this." Elias's voice was quiet, but every word carried iron. "Then the Council has chosen the path of war." Mara looked at him, eyes shining with restrained anger. "What will we do?" He turned toward the sky, toward the endless stars that had once promised peace. "What we always do," he said softly. "Survive. Adapt. Fight." He looked back at her, his expression unreadable. "And this time, Lieutenant, we won't be the ones begging for understanding. We'll be the ones teaching them what it means to stand against humanity." That night, the first Terran fleet left Mars' orbit. Hundreds of ships, black and silent, like a storm forming in the void. They carried no banners, no declarations, only resolve. As the Aegis Dawn led the vanguard, Elias Thorn stood on the bridge, watching Earth fade behind him, blue and fragile, the cradle of everything they were. "Set course for Vega Sector," he said quietly. Mara hesitated. "To fight, sir?" He shook his head. "To send a message." The stars stretched into lines as the fleet jumped into faster-than-light travel, and for the first time in centuries, the galaxy trembled, not at humanity's reach, but at its wrath. The war did not begin with explosions. It began with silence. The Galactic Council had expected humanity to lash out, to charge into battle like beasts blinded by rage. They thought humans would shout their defiance, storm the border worlds, and crumble beneath the weight of superior fleets. But when the months passed and no counterattack came, the Council grew uneasy. Then their ships began to vanish. Patrols along the Vega line disappeared without a trace. Entire listening outposts went dark, their transmissions cut mid-sentence. Wreckage was seldom found, only fragments drifting quietly through the void. At first, the Council dismissed it as internal error, perhaps even sabotage. But as the losses grew, so did their fear. Something was hunting them. Deep in the shadows of the Anduril expanse, the Aegis Dawn drifted in silence. Her hull was coated in adaptive alloy, blending seamlessly with the cosmic dust. Inside, the crew moved like ghosts, every light dimmed, every sound suppressed. Captain Elias Thorn stood before the tactical map, the pale glow reflecting in his eyes. Red markers, Council outposts flickered, then blinked out one by one. "They still haven't traced us?" Mara Voss asked quietly, standing beside him. Elias shook his head. "They can't. They built their networks for dominance, not defense. They've never fought an enemy who thinks like us." He tapped the display, revealing the silent ripple of human fleets hidden across the sector. "We're not matching them in numbers. We're bleeding them through their arrogance. Every outpost they lose means panic, every missing ship means doubt. Fear will do more damage than any weapon." Mara studied the map. "Sir, this strategy, it's working. But it's also changing us. Every time we strike from the shadows, we become more like them." Elias's gaze lingered on the flickering stars. "Maybe that's what survival demands," he said quietly. "Maybe peace was a dream we could only afford when we were naive." The human fleets became whispers in the dark. They learned to move unseen, to strike and vanish like the ghosts of their fallen worlds. Drones disguised as debris transmitted false signals. Council convoys found their navigational codes rewritten, sending them into asteroid fields or straight into their own mine belts. For every planet the Council attacked, 3 of their worlds went dark in return. Yet humanity never announced its hand. They left no messages, no demands, only the echo of loss. The galaxy began calling it the War of Silence. In the grand chamber of the Council, panic spread behind polished words and desperate debates. "They are destabilizing our networks," hissed Councillor Vareth of the Kirith Dominion, his silver scales glinting under the hall lights. "Human interference has corrupted 27 relay nodes. They can't possibly sustain this level of disruption," said Councillor Oru, a towering crystalline being. "Their resources are limited." "And yet," interrupted the speaker, her translucent wings trembling with tension, "they continue. Every projection shows their reach expanding. We underestimated them." She turned toward the central hologram, Earth glowing faintly blue. "They were meant to be our allies. How did it come to this?" No one answered. Far away, Elias Thorn walked the darkened corridors of the Aegis Dawn. He paused before a window, watching the stars drift past. They looked peaceful, distant, unaware of the war burning between them. A soft voice interrupted his thoughts. It was Mara again, standing beside him with a datapad. "Report from the Vega sector. Another Council fleet destroyed. No survivors." Elias closed his eyes briefly. "How many humans lost?" 17. He nodded, the muscle in his jaw tightening. 17. For a fleet of thousands. He didn't sound proud, only weary. Mara hesitated, then said softly, "Sir, when this is over, will we ever be the same again?" Elias didn't answer at once. His reflection looked older, heavier, burdened with too many ghosts. "I don't know," he admitted finally. "But I know this, the Council thought they could erase us. They forgot what humans do when we're pushed to the edge." He turned toward her, his expression unreadable but fierce. "We evolve." Later that night, the fleet received a single transmission, a distress signal from a neutral colony near the Council border. It was weak, filled with static, but one word was clear: help. Elias stared at it for a long moment. It wasn't human. It was a plea from one of the Council's own member races. "Sir?" Mara asked, uncertain. "Do we respond?" Elias's eyes narrowed. "Plot a course," he said quietly. "If the Council has started abandoning their own, Then it's time the galaxy saw the difference between humanity and those who betrayed us. As the Aegis Dawn changed course, her engines hummed softly, cutting through the silence of war. Somewhere beyond those cold stars, a new kind of dawn was waiting, one forged not in fury alone, but in the rediscovery of what it meant to be human. The war of silence had begun to shift. The distress call led them to the world of Serath, a quiet, green planet once rich with forests and shimmering lakes. Now it was a graveyard. Fires burned in slow waves across the horizon. The sky was filled with drifting ash, and the faint pulse of energy signatures showed where orbital bombardments had scorched the land. When the Aegis Dawn descended through the smoky clouds, the crew fell silent. This was no battlefield. This was an execution. Scan for survivors. Captain Elias Thorn ordered, his voice steady but low. Reading faint life signs in the southern valley, Mara Voss replied. Dozens, maybe hundreds. Deploy med teams. Full security perimeter. I want answers. Moments later, human boots touched Serath soil for the first time. The air was thick with dust and grief. The survivors were thin, trembling beings. Avrians, a gentle winged species known for their art and music. Their feathers were burned and gray. When they saw human soldiers, they flinched in fear. One of them, a young Avrian woman clutching a child, whispered hoarsely, "Please. We have nothing left to give." Elias knelt before her, removing his helmet. The sight of his weathered face made her pause. His voice was calm, deliberate. "We didn't come to take. We came because someone asked for help." Her wide, luminous eyes blinked with disbelief. You are human?" "I am. But the Council said you were monsters. That you destroy everything you touch." Elias looked around at the burning world. "The Council told us the same about you." For a moment there was only the sound of wind and flame. Then quietly she said, "They did this. The Council ships. They said our world harbored Terran spies. We begged them to search, to see the truth, but they didn't listen." Elias's jaw tightened. "They never do." Back aboard the Aegis Dawn, the command deck was filled with quiet urgency. Medical bays overflowed with the wounded Avrians. Human doctors worked side by side with engineers repurposing supply crates into shelters. Mara approached Elias as he stood watching from the observation platform. "Command wants a status report." And she hesitated. "They're questioning your decision to take in aliens." Elias didn't look away from the scene below. "Let them question. If being human means abandoning compassion, then we've already lost." "But sir," Mara said carefully, "we're in a war. Every resource we spend here is one we can't use on the front." He turned to her, his voice quiet but unyielding. "This is the front. Right here. Right now. Every act of mercy is a strike against their lie. They called us monsters, Mara. Let's make them choke on their own deceit." She said nothing for a while. Then she nodded. "Aye, sir." News of what happened on Serath spread quickly, first through the survivors, then through the galaxy. The story of a human fleet that saved an alien world the Council had destroyed began to ripple through channels no law could silence. At first, the Council tried to suppress it. Then they tried to deny it, but the images spoke louder than their propaganda. Humans tending to Avrian children, soldiers sharing rations with burned refugees, engineers rebuilding power grids from scrap. And then came the message from the Avrian elder, broadcast across the neutral networks. They call humanity dangerous. But danger, it seems, has shown us more kindness than the stars that claim to protect us. That one sentence cracked the Council's image like glass. Weeks later, Elias sat alone in his quarters reviewing the reports. Human losses were rising. Supplies were thin. Yet for the first time, other species were sending encrypted messages, not of threats, but of questions. "Is it true you saved Serath?" "Can we speak privately? We don't trust the Council anymore." Mara entered quietly, setting down a steaming mug. "You've been at this all night," he smiled faintly. "I used to dream that one day the galaxy would listen to us. I didn't think it would take this much blood." "They're listening now," she said softly. "Maybe," he murmured, staring at the stars beyond the viewport. "But the question is, what will they hear? Mercy or vengeance?" That night, as the ship drifted through the void, the crew received a coded transmission. It was brief, untraceable, and unsigned. "We saw what you did on Serath. You are not alone." Elias read it twice, the corners of his mouth curving into the faintest smile. He looked toward the stars, those same stars that had betrayed them, and whispered, "Then the cracks have begun to show." Outside, the dark ocean of space shimmered faintly. For the first time since the betrayal, it didn't feel hostile. It felt watchful. The galaxy was beginning to whisper. From the dying stars of the rim worlds to the shining towers of the core, stories of Serath spread like wildfire. Whispers of human compassion, of soldiers who fought not just for survival but for others, broke through the Council's carefully woven lies. The more they tried to silence the tales, the louder they became. On the shadowed side of the moon, Naria, a secret meeting was taking place. Representatives of minor species, once loyal to the Galactic Council, gathered in a hidden chamber deep beneath the surface. The room was dimly lit, the air thick with tension. "We cannot continue like this," hissed Councillor Vareth of the Kyreth Dominion, his silver scales glinting faintly. "The Council burns planets without trial, claiming they hide humans. The people are afraid, but the people are angry," corrected a soft melodic voice. It belonged to an Avrian elder, her wings folded like a shroud. "And fear can be silenced. Anger cannot." A smaller being, a Miran with translucent skin that shimmered with color, leaned forward. "If humanity has truly turned their wrath against the Council, perhaps they are not our enemy." There was silence. The thought alone bordered on treason. Finally, Vareth whispered, "If the humans can bleed the Council, then perhaps they can free us." And in that small secret room, the first seeds of rebellion took root. Far across the void on the flagship Aegis Dawn, Captain Elias Thorn stood before the holomap as new reports flickered into existence. Systems once firmly under Council control were beginning to show unrest. Protests, riots, supply lines disrupted. Mara Voss stepped beside him, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Sir, look at these transmissions. The Avrian colonies have refused to send tribute ships. The Miran trade guilds are striking. Even some Kyreth warships have gone silent." Elias studied the data quietly, the faint blue glow reflecting in his eyes. "The cracks are widening," he murmured. "They're starting to see what we've always known. The Council's peace was built on chains." Mara looked at him, half smiling. "And we're the hammer?" He didn't return the smile. "No, Lieutenant. We're the spark. The hammer will be their own conscience." The Council's high chamber was in chaos. Delegates shouted over one another, their voices rising in fear and accusation. "The humans are spreading rebellion," one cried. "They've corrupted our allies," shouted another. "Perhaps it is our cruelty that fuels their sympathy," whispered a third, quickly silenced by the speaker's gavel. The speaker, her once regal wings now trembling with exhaustion, tried to restore order. "Enough, we are the guardians of galactic unity. Humanity seeks to undo all we have built." But even as she spoke, she could feel it, the weight of uncertainty in the room. The doubt, the shame, the realization that perhaps the humans had become something greater than rebels. They had become truth. Back aboard the Aegis Dawn, a new visitor arrived, a young Avrian messenger, one of those saved from Serath. She bowed deeply before Elias, her wings quivering with nervous awe. "My people sent me to deliver this," she said, handing him a small crystal data core. "It holds the names of worlds ready to rise. They wish to fight, but not as conquerors, as equals." Elias took the core, turning it slowly in his hand. "Do they understand what that means?" She looked at him with clear, determined eyes. "It means hope, Captain. Something the Council has forgotten." He smiled faintly. "Then we'll remind them." The Aegis Dawn fleet began moving again, this time not to attack but to protect. They escorted supply convoys to starving colonies. They shielded refugee ships fleeing Council bombardments. Every act of defense, every spark of mercy drew more species to their side. Soon it was no longer a war of humans against the galaxy. It was the galaxy awakening against its masters. And yet, with every victory, Elias felt the weight of the coming reckoning. In the quiet of his quarters, he spoke softly to the image of Earth on his display, the same blue world that had watched them fall and rise again. "We started this fight to survive," he whispered. "Now we fight for something larger. But every storm needs a center. And I fear that center will break." One night, as the fleet sailed silently between stars, Mara entered the bridge with urgent news. "Captain," she said, breathless. "Intercepted Council transmission. top-level encryption. They're calling an emergency summit on Arctis Prime. Every major fleet will be there. Elias's eyes narrowed. The Council gathering all in one place. That's desperation. Or a trap, Mara warned. Maybe both, he said quietly. Either way, it's the chance we've been waiting for. He turned toward the vast expanse of stars, his voice calm, resolute. Signal the fleet. Prepare for transit. The storm is gathering, and humanity will be its thunder. The Council's capital world, Arctis Prime, gleamed like a jewel in the void. Its towers soared above clouds that shimmered with artificial auroras, and fleets of Council ships patrolled the skies like swarms of silver insects. From orbit, it looked untouchable, an empire built on centuries of deception, arrogance, and unquestioned authority. But Captain Elias Thorn did not flinch. He stood on the bridge of the Aegis Dawn, eyes fixed on the planet below. This was more than a battle. This was the reckoning. Mara Voss approached him, her expression taut with tension. Sir, the Council fleets, they outnumber us 3-1, even with our allies, Avrians, Mirans, defecting Kyrith. The odds are slim. Elias's jaw tightened. Odds are meaningless if the spirit of humanity stands stronger than their empire. He turned to the tactical map, where colored markers showed the human fleet converging with allies in precise, silent formations. We're not attacking blindly, he said. We are infiltrating, striking where it will matter most, not their fleets, but their command. Their network. Their credibility, Mara frowned. You mean a surgical strike? Elias nodded. Every Council ship destroyed is a message. Every Allied fleet saved is proof. This is not just war, it's revelation. Below, on the surface, the city shimmered in ordered perfection. But the human fleet approached not with fanfare, but with stealth. Cloaking systems kept the dreadnoughts invisible to Council sensors. Scouts slipped through defense grids like shadows, their small craft whispering past orbital platforms. Inside the central tower, the Speaker of the Council stood before her delegates. The humans gather their allies, she said, her voice trembling. We cannot hold them off indefinitely. Contain them. Eliminate them. Even as she spoke, panic rippled through her ranks. Reports of colonies rising against Council control, fleets mutinying, and sabotage within the Council's supply lines filled the communication channels. Fear, the one thing the Council never expected, was spreading faster than any weapon. On the bridge of the Aegis Dawn, the operation was underway. Elias watched the first wave of boarding teams move silently through the planet's orbital gates. Holographic markers traced their path. Council security nodes, energy conduits, and strategic command centers. Mara's fingers flew over the controls. They fortified the central command core with high-level shields. One wrong move and it's over for us. Elias's voice was calm, but each word cut like steel. Then we move carefully. We are not here to die. We are here to awaken the galaxy. The boarding teams hit their targets with precision. In hours, the Council's command network was infiltrated. Communications were hijacked, defenses disabled, and Council ships turned against each other through carefully executed hacking. Chaos spread through the Empire like wildfire. In the central chamber of Arctis Prime, the Speaker realized the scale of the disaster too late. Holographic displays flickered with the movements of human and allied fleets, showing entire squadrons switching allegiance, some docking with the human armada. Her voice rose in panic. Seal the gates. Recall the fleets. Stop them. But the human strike had already begun to unravel the Council's control. Every failed order, every intercepted transmission, every ally gained by humanity pushed the Empire closer to collapse. Elias Thorn watched the chaos unfold from orbit. His face was weary, lined with the weight of countless losses, but his eyes burned with resolve. Mara, he said softly. The Council thought they could define humanity. They thought they could bind us with fear and betrayal. Tonight, we show them what it truly means to be human. Below, the first Council warships began surrendering, their crews hesitating as they witnessed the human fleet protecting fleeing colonies instead of annihilating them. Across the galaxy, hidden observers took note. The humans fought not for dominance but for survival, and for justice. Hours later, the Speaker was captured aboard the Aegis Dawn, her pride shattered. She stared at Elias Thorn with disbelief. You did not destroy us, she said, her voice trembling. He leaned forward, calm but unwavering. "We didn't destroy you," he said. "We reminded the galaxy that trust and betrayal, mercy and cruelty, those are choices. You chose betrayal. Humanity chose survival. And something more. A galaxy united not by fear but by courage." The speaker's wings drooped, her empire crumbling beneath her. Outside, the auroras of Arctis Prime shimmered with new light, signaling the dawn of a new order. As the fleet regrouped in orbit, Elias addressed his allies, human and alien alike. "We have not just survived," he said, voice steady, ringing across the comms. "We have awakened the galaxy. Let this be remembered. No empire built on lies can withstand the truth. No chain forged in fear can bind a species with heart, with courage, with resolve." Mara watched him, eyes glimmering. "And Earth?" she whispered. He looked toward the distant blue planet, serene in the void. "Earth will rise," he said, "as it always has. And humanity. Humanity will never be forgotten." Outside, the stars stretched endlessly, no longer indifferent observers. They seemed to shimmer in acknowledgement. A storm had passed, but a new era was just beginning. Humanity had struck not in blind fury, but in the clarity of purpose. And the galaxy would never look at the stars the same way again. The galaxy exhaled. After decades of betrayal, loss, and bloodshed, the silence that followed was almost deafening. Arctis Prime, once the heart of the Galactic Council's iron rule, now lay in the careful hands of humanity and its allies. Humanity had not raised it. They had rebuilt it. Where ash and steel once dominated, there were gardens, clean waters, and the cautious laughter of children, the first Avrian children to be free of fear. Captain Elias Thorn stood on the observation deck of the Aegis Dawn, looking down at the planet. The world shimmered with lights, life pulsing through streets, forests, and lakes. Humanity had led the charge, but it was not theirs alone. Every species that had been silenced, abandoned, or oppressed now had a voice. "Sir," Mara Voss said softly, stepping beside him. "It's done. The Council is dissolved. Their fleets either surrendered or integrated into the new coalition. The galaxy is quiet." Elias didn't speak immediately. He let the quiet sink in, letting the weight of it press against his chest, not a burden, but a reminder. Years of betrayal, billions lost, worlds burned, and yet they had endured. They had risen. Finally, he said, "Quiet doesn't mean peace, Mara. It means opportunity. For too long, the galaxy was bound by fear and obedience. Now," he paused, watching a distant aurora pulse above Arctis Prime's horizon. "Now it can breathe again." The new Galactic Assembly convened in what had once been the Council's grand chamber. Human delegates sat beside former Council races who had once feared them. Avrians, Mirans, Kareth, and even lesser-known colonies now shared the same table, discussing trade, defense, and governance not as subjects, but as equals. President Alina Cortez spoke first, her voice steady, ringing with clarity. "We are here not to claim dominion, but to ensure the galaxy remembers the cost of betrayal and the power of unity. Humanity was cast aside and tested, and we endured. Let this assembly be a place where no species must fear the silence of betrayal again." From the back of the chamber, whispers grew into applause. The walls that had once enforced obedience now carried voices of hope, voices of trust, voices of rebuilding. Elias walked among the assembly later, observing the conversations, small negotiations, laughter, cautious friendship. Mara joined him, handing him a data pad showing the first list of Allied fleet commanders, each willing to pledge loyalty not to humans, but to the ideals they represented: justice, courage, and mercy. "It's remarkable," she said softly. "We went to war to survive, and now we've helped build something greater." He nodded, a faint smile forming. "We were betrayed, Mara, but we didn't let that define us. The galaxy saw the choice humanity made, and it inspired them. That is our true strength." A young Avrian child ran past, trailing a string of luminous petals, giggling as they chased a small drone shaped like a human bird. Elias watched her, feeling something he hadn't in decades: hope, pure and unshakable. Later, in the quiet of the observation deck, Mara asked, "Do you ever wonder if it could have ended differently?" Elias stared at the stars, distant, calm, yet alive with possibility. Every choice could have ended differently, but the outcome isn't measured by what could have been. It's measured by what we chose to do. We chose to endure, to fight, and to show mercy even when it was hardest. He turned to her, eyes glinting with quiet fire. That is what makes us human. That is what will echo through the stars long after we are gone. Across the galaxy, former Council outposts began displaying a new symbol, the Terran sigil, not as conquerors, but as protectors. Humanity's story spread through space, not just a tale of revenge, but of resilience, mercy, and unity. The stars no longer seemed cold or indifferent. They seemed alive with possibility, reflecting the courage of a species that had been pushed to the edge and had awakened. Elias watched the first sunrise over Arctis Prime's reconstructed plains, the golden light spilling across lakes and forests, illuminating the faces of humans and aliens alike. He whispered to no one in particular, "We were betrayed by the stars, but we made our own dawn." And so humanity rose, not merely to survive but to inspire. Across the galaxy, the echoes of their spirit would be felt for generations. A new era had begun, a dawn of courage, unity, and unbreakable hope. The stars would never forget.